Go, let's go.
Let's go. No, come on, man.
The story kicks off with two cops, Tony and Juan, heading to a location where illegal substances are being made and sold.
I am having lots of second thoughts.
Nah, you doing it.
While on their way, Juan excitedly shares some big news. He's about to be a dad. His wife is expecting, and Tony is thrilled for him.
Mark Anthony.
Idiot.
Once they arrive, Tony tells Juan to stay in the car while he and the other officers raid the place. The police start clearing the area, taking down suspects one by one. Tony soon realizes there are still people inside, so he steps in. He spots a dealer making a deal with a woman while a huge guy is being let out by the cops. The massive guy seems calm at first, which makes the officers escorting him drop their guard. Suddenly, he attacks, grabbing one of the officers' guns and making a run for it. Tony chases after him. Outside, Juan is on the phone with his wife when he notices the big guy running with a gun. He's caught off guard but tries to stop him. Unfortunately, the guy is way ahead in the game and shoots Juan multiple times, killing him on the spot. The killer manages to escape, leaving Tony devastated. He just lost his partner and best friend right in front of his eyes. Meanwhile, we meet an older man named Nick, who's enjoying retirement on a boat. Nick used to be an assassin, working for the government. One day, an old friend visits him with an offer, another contract kill. The target? Someone who's a threat to the U.S. economy. At first, Nick refuses since he's done with that life.
You didn't get the hints because of my...
But after seeing the fat paycheck, he changes his mind. Back at the station, Tony is struggling to cope with Juan's death.
Last I heard, but somebody must...
He feels guilty for making him wait in the car. His boss suggests taking some time off, but Tony refuses. He's determined to keep working.
Just rubbed me the wrong way about him, so I ran it.
Soon, Juan's pregnant wife storms in, demanding justice for her husband. Tony promises her he'll find the killer. Later, Tony and his boss interrogate a dealer they arrested. The dealer spills some shocking info. His boss isn't just some small-time supplier. He's got big plans.
Who is that? FBI.
The dealer offers to reveal more in exchange for a lighter sentence and a night in a hotel before going to prison.
I get it. I'm in shit.
It sounds ridiculous, but the police are desperate for answers, so they agree. Meanwhile, Nick is getting ready for his mission. He gathers his weapons, sets up his vehicle, and makes sure he's untraceable.
Roger that. Oh.
Once prepared, he heads to the location and blends in as an ordinary passerby. His eyes are locked on a hotel where his target is staying. When the time is right, he moves to a rooftop across the street, unpacks his sniper rifle from a golf bag, and takes aim. At the same time, Tony arrives at the hotel to pick up the dealer and take him back to jail. It turns out Nick's target is the dealer himself. Nick stays patient, waiting for the perfect moment. As soon as the dealer steps out, Nick fires one precise shot, killing him instantly.
Get in the fucking car!
Tony is in complete shock. He never saw it coming. He immediately rushes toward where he thinks the shooter might be, unknowingly crossing paths with Nick.
He was at Vista Parallax, which is a harem.
But he has no clue that Nick is the killer. The cops have lost their informant. But soon, Tony's superiors receive intel. Apparently, the dealer was part of a much larger network,
A stakeout across the street. And
and a transaction is set to happen soon. Tony is ordered to monitor the group's activities. He starts watching them through security cameras, but the audio is useless. The system has been hacked. Frustrated, he decides to go undercover as a buyer to gather intel himself. When he arrives, the gang keeps him at a distance, only allowing him to sit outside the room where real buyers get access. With no other choice, he thinks of another way in. He spots a woman working as a cook and decides to approach her. Her name is Mina, but she's not interested in talking and walks away. Left with no other option, Tony reveals he's a cop and just needs her help for a moment. Eventually, she agrees to listen.
From me.
What's your name?
Tony asks Mina to plant a recording device in the VIP room.
Why?
At first, she refuses. She's terrified of losing her job if she gets caught. But after some convincing, she finally agrees. Tony returns to his team, who are monitoring the cameras again, and Mina successfully places the recording device. However, just when they think they're about to get crucial information, the gang switches rooms. Once again, the conversation is out of reach. At the same time, Nick is also keeping an eye on the location. He covers his head, sneaks through a hidden back entrance, and slips inside without anyone noticing. It turns out that a guy named Rafi is leading this gang. He's meeting with a scientist to discuss a dangerous plan. Just like the dealer mentioned earlier, Rafi isn't just a supplier. He has a much bigger goal: to wreak havoc on the American economy.
It's all here.
Rafi teams up with the scientist, who shows off his high-tech gadget, a device that can shut down an entire city's power grid with just one tap on his phone. But before they can dive into their plan, unexpected visitors burst in, guns blazing. Chaos erupts, and several of Rafi's men drop dead on the spot. Luckily, Rafi and the scientist manage to make a run for it, escaping unscathed. By the time Tony gets to the scene, it's already too late. The place is empty except for the bodies of Rafi's fallen men,
What money?
leaving him frustrated. Meanwhile, Rafi, now on edge, demands that the scientist complete the device as soon as possible. The scientist agrees, but raises his price, knowing he holds all the power. Without hesitation, Rafi accepts the deal. A few days later, Rafi's brother throws a wild party, inviting a massive crowd. Meanwhile, Tony is still on the hunt for Rafi and questions his brother about his whereabouts. Unfortunately, Rafi's brother has no idea where he is. Rafi and his crew, including the huge guy who took one's life, are keeping tabs on the party. The big guy spots Tony and immediately recognizes him as the cop who raided their operation. He alerts Rafi, who doesn't waste any time ordering his men to take Tony out. At the party, Tony runs into Mina, who, as it turns out, is working as a chef there. As if that's not enough, he also notices Nick lurking around. When Tony tries to follow him, Nick vanishes into the crowd. Tony and Mina attempt to track him down, but end up losing sight of him. Determined not to give up, Tony stations himself near the last place he saw Nick. After what feels like forever, he finally spots Nick's car and quickly tails him, forcing him to pull over. When Tony confronts him, he gets the shock of his life. Nick is actually his long-lost father, the man who walked out on him years ago. Nick invites Tony to his apartment by the pier, where they have a heart-to-heart. Tony demands to know why Nick abandoned him. Nick lays it all out, explaining that he used to be a government assassin. He left because he believed Tony had been killed by one of his enemies and wanted to keep him safe. Surprisingly, Tony accepts the explanation. Nick also reveals that he's on the same mission as Tony, tracking down Rafi and stopping his plan to destroy the economy. After their long talk, Nick hands Tony a phone so they can stay in touch and then heads out. Before long, Rafi figures out that Tony is closing in on him. His men ambush Tony, capturing him, while Nick gets attacked and knocked down. Tony is taken to Rafi's hideout, where Rafi interrogates him, demanding to know who's been interfering with his business. Without hesitation, Tony casually tells him it was his own father. He orders his men to beat Tony before finishing him off. But just as things take a turn for the worst, Nick shows up. Thanks to the tracking device on the phone he gave Tony, Nick was able to find him. With years of experience as a hitman, he takes down Rafi's guards effortlessly, rescues Tony, and takes him back to his place to patch him up. Meanwhile, Rafi and the big guy barely manage to escape. Moments after the chaos, the police arrive and find several of Rafi's men dead, along with the high-tech device Rafi planned to use. Without wasting time, they arrest him. Just when things seem to settle down, Tony gets a call from Mina. But it's not her voice he hears, it's the big guy. He's holding Mina hostage and demands that Tony come alone if he wants to see her alive. Nick warns Tony to be careful, and the two of them quickly make their way to the meeting spot. When Tony arrives, Rafi's men have their guns pointed at Mina. They demand that Tony bring Nick with him, wanting to take them both down at once. As the tension builds, Nick takes the first shot, and chaos erupts. Father and son work together, taking out Rafi's crew one by one. In the end, Rafi's own men turn on him, demanding payment in exchange for his location. Nick and Tony play along, but obviously have no intention of paying them. Meanwhile, the scientist shows up at Rafi's place, demanding his money up front. But Rafi, now furious that his device is in police custody, snaps and shoots the scientist in the head instead of paying him. His brother, who happens to be nearby, witnesses the brutal act and is completely horrified, realizing just how ruthless Rafi has become. Not long after, the big guy arrives, dragging Nick along as if he's captured him. He also brings a body bag as proof. But when Rafi opens it, Tony jumps out, gun ready. Rafi and his men are caught off guard, and a final showdown begins. But Nick and Tony are prepared and eliminate them all in no time. With Rafi's men out of the picture, the remaining traitors demand their promised payment, but Tony and Nick refuse. Soon, the police arrive, successfully shutting down Rafi's entire operation. Fast forward a few years, Tony and Nick are seen hanging out at the pier apartment. Tony is now married to Mina, and they have a child together. Meanwhile, Nick, now a grandpa, has settled down with a young wife. He suggests they all move to a better place since he's got plenty of money. Just then, Nick's phone rings. It's his government contact, offering him another high-paying mission. Looks like retirement will have to wait. The end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications for more awesome content.